I wanted to pick up on the distinction between conservative government and authoritarian government, because a lot of times there will be kind of popular discourse. So people are labeling Trump authoritarian because it's sour grapes, right? The liberals lost, the Democrats lost, and so they're using this moniker of authoritarian or fascist to discredit him, and he was democratically elected. And so, can you be precise about what makes Trump authoritarian, kind of the difference between good old-fashioned conservative government and authoritarian government? Because a lot of these figures, Bukele, Orban, go on down the list, they paint themselves as just sort of family values, traditional conservative government, but they're using authoritarian tactics and eroding the institutions of democracy that got them to power.
I would say conservatism still operates in a framework of democracy. Authoritarianism considers democracy an enemy to be vanquished. If the GOP were at all conservative, it would not have supported January 6th, which was an attempt to overthrow the government, first overturn it by denying the results, and then unleashing a violent mob against GOP and Democratic lawmakers who called their loved ones and thought they were going to die, and also trying to plot against one of the most right-wing politicians, or you could say conservative, Mike Pence, who was targeted for physical harm on January 6th and wouldn't even get into the car. We have to remember these things. Wouldn't even get into the Secret Service car because he had an instinct or he had information. So if you were really a conservative, you would not be down for that. So that is a sign, and January 6th was highly effective at shocking the GOP, precisely because they were targeted. They could have lost their lives. There were, then studies now is that it was only 30 seconds that separated Mike Pence from a bad fate. So they're not conservatives. The other thing but your question gets at what makes it sometimes more difficult to understand authoritarianism today, because it masquerades as Orban's term, illiberal democracy. It uses the institutions of democracy to then discredit democracy. So today we have what we call electoral autocracy. So today, and this is a big difference with what still hangs around, one-party states are still hanging around North Korea, China, and many other places. But today, you don't need to get rid of elections to be an authoritarian. You keep them, and Orban and also Erdogan in Turkey, we should, let's not get started on him. He always gets a pass, Erdogan, but both of them have done an excellent job of keeping elections going while actually gaming the system so that things work out the way they need them to. And one way Orban did this is by domesticating the media, so that 85 to 90% of the media is Orban centric. And that meant that in the last presidential election, nobody heard the message of the opposition candidate outside of Budapest and some other big cities. They're just not putting them on air. And in fact, that candidate couldn't get on national TV. So that's one way. And there are many, many, many other tricks you use. So we shouldn't consider we shouldn't believe the scam of autocrats when they say, as Erdogan does, what do you mean I'm a dictator? We have elections here, because that's not how authoritarianism works today.
And I think one thing you're hinting at is that these moments are confusing for people. Sort of the slide from electoral democracy, sort of fully liberal democracy, to a weaker version of democracy, to electoral autocracy. A lot of these places never get to that closed, what we call closed autocracy, one party. They hang around in that muddy middle ground. And so it's hard for people to understand that ambiguity, and all of it is done with pretext, right? And Sue Stokes, who's coming in a few weeks, has a new book coming out on backsliding, and she uses the phrase trash talking democracy. So these leaders will bash the courts and bash elections and then use that logic to undermine them, right? So our elections are rigged, therefore we're going to have gerrymandered districts, or we're going to get rid of the Voting Rights Act, or on and on and on, right? And so this this idea of pretext and cover, I think, is really an important
Yeah.
theme.
And one of the very important things that, and Trump has been brilliant at this, truly brilliant. If you're working inside a still democratic system, you must engage in a work of delegitimation. And let's just keep with the judicial system, but it extends to more. You must discredit and smear and target as biased and rigged all facets of the democratic institutions. So judges, prosecutors, lawyers who won't, do your bidding, even elections. Everything must be discredited as rigged, and the authority of those judges and prosecutors must be tarnished through smear campaigns, through investigations, anything that's going to lead people to think that justice is rigged, elections are rigged, and so we can't. And the purpose of this is to transfer the trust and confidence that you should have as a citizen of a democracy or a dweller in a democracy to the leader, who is the only arbiter of truth and justice and all of that. But think about how effective Trump has been at Trump and Company. When I say Trump, it's also MAGA and all of the media ecosystem. He's also done this with educational authorities, scientific authorities, any kind of authority who adheres to democratic values and democratic notions of objectivity, impartiality, independence. All of them must go. All of them must be targeted for smear campaigns.